When people talk about legendary dive watches, a few names always come up: the Rolex Submariner, the Omega Seamaster, and the Blancpain 50 Fathoms. But there's another watch that deserves to be in that conversation, the Breitling Superocean. Introduced in 1957, the Superocean was built for serious underwater exploration and has quietly evolved into one of the most capable and underrated dive watches on the market today. And the best part, compared to many luxury dive watches, the Superocean remains a relative bargain. Let's take a look at the history of the Superocean and references that shaped it. In 1957, Breitling introduced two dive watches at the same time, the Breitling Superocean Reference 1004 and the Breitling Superocean 807. The 1004 was a cleaner, time-only diver. The 807, however, was something unusual, a chronograph dive watch. Today, dive chronographs are common, but in the 1950s, this was groundbreaking. The 807 featured a rotating bezel, large luminous markers, and a bold, legible dial for underwater visibility. While many brands were just beginning to explore dive watch design, Breitling was already pushing boundaries. In the 1960s, Breitling introduced what would become one of the most recognizable Superoceans ever made, the Breitling Superocean 2005, also known as the Slow Motion. This watch replaced the traditional chronograph seconds hand with a large, brightly colored minute hand, because underwater minutes matter far more than seconds. The design made elapsed dive time extremely easy to read at a glance. The slow motion Superocean was bold, colorful, and completely unlike anything else on the market. Today, vintage examples are highly collectible. After the quartz crisis and changing market trends, the Superocean disappeared for a while, but in the 90s, Breitling brought it back. The modern Breitling Superocean Automatic featured improved water resistance and a rugged build quality. These watches often had 1,500 meters of water resistance, far exceeding the needs of recreational divers. The modern Superocean was designed to be a serious professional tool watch. In 2007, Breitling introduced what might become the most popular line today, the Breitling Superocean Heritage. Instead of focusing on modern tool aesthetics, this watch leaned heavily into vintage inspiration. Design elements included a ceramic bezel, minimalist dial text, arrow-shaped power hands, and an iconic mesh bracelet. The Heritage line captures the spirit of the original 1950s watches while offering modern reliability. It quickly became one of Breitling's best-selling collections. In 2022, Breitling launched a completely redesigned Breitling Superocean. The design took inspiration directly from the 1960s slow motion and Superocean. Notable design features included bright colors, large applied indices, crash-resistant ceramic bezels, and water resistance up to 300 meters. It's sporty, bold, and clearly designed for modern everyday wear. Here's why the Superocean becomes especially interesting. When people buy luxury dive watches, they often compare models like the Submariner, the Seamaster, the Tudor Black Bay. These are all fantastic watches, but the Breitling Superocean often costs significantly less. You still get Swiss manufacturing, chronometer-certified movements in many models, excellent finishing, ceramic bezels, and serious dive capability. In many cases, you can find a Superocean thousands of dollars less than a Submariner, despite similar quality and heritage. This makes for one of the best value propositions in luxury dive watches. For nearly 70 years, the Breitling Superocean has been part of the story of dive watches, from the groundbreaking 1957 originals to the experimental slow-motion chronographs to the modern watches worn today. It's always been a serious underwater tool, but today it might also be something else, one of the most underrated bargains in the world of luxury watches. And for collectors who value history, capability, and distinctive design, that might make the Superocean one of the smartest dive watches you can buy. I want to talk about one of my newest watches, and that's the Breitling Superocean that I have on my wrist right now. I also want to talk about what makes us so fascinated with diving watches. You know, when I look at a diving watch, I was kind of thinking about it recently, and I was thinking, man, it's sort of like having a miniature submarine on your wrist. And it gives us aspirations to want to dive just like a professional, but we never do. I never do. I take it to work. I have it at my desk. You know, I'm wearing it and I admire it and I love the look of it. And I just don't know exactly why divers are my favorite kind of watch. And I think, you know, a lot of us share that same opinion. We all love divers, but we don't dive. So why do we need divers? Why do we like them so much? The look, the clickiness of the rotating bezel. It's always been my favorite and probably always will be my favorite, even though I do have a thing for chronographs as well, even though I never use the chronograph function for timing anything. I just like the way they look. I think I just like the way that divers look. I think that's just pretty much it. every kind of watch person out there can kind of share that sentiment. The fact that we probably don't dive with them. If anything, we're going swim, maybe we'll jump in the pool, go to the beach, that kind of thing. And we know that it's gonna be okay if you go swimming or something. You have that screw down crown, you have that extra water resistance that you probably will ever need, but it's there. But anyway, let's go into the other room and talk about why I like this watch, why I think the Breitling Superocean is slept on. It should be on your short list if you're looking for a really great diver's watch in 2026. This is my new Seamaster. The first thing I want to point out, the reason why I bought this watch was the fact that it had such a nice dial. I didn't have any dials just like this one. It has this sort of almost like you may think it's white, but it's sort of like an opaline or silvery color, but it sort of gives you that white probably through the camera you're probably thinking it looks white, but it doesn't. It's sort of like a silvery kind of color. As far as the dial is concerned, it has a little bit of dimensionality in the rehaut. So one of the things that set this apart is one of the things I like the most is it has the blued hands and blued indices. So if you look at the indices, the hands are blued. The contrast between the dial and the blued hands and the blued indices is the blued Arabic numbers on the minute track on the outside of the perimeter of the rehaut area is just so nice. The applied B for the Breitling logo, which is applied there. The plentiful lume. I like the lume color of this watch. It's also sort of like a blue hue to the lume when you see it at night. It's so nice. It sort of gives me that nautical feeling, that bluish and kind of white. This watch has so much going for it. Moving back, to talk about bezel action, you go in and you can hear that pretty good. It is so smooth. And just, I would say that it's comparable to the bezel action on the Rolex Submariner. Definitely, it's 120 clicks. I like the bezel action in Tudors as well, but this one is certainly more, I would say, more refined and better in my opinion. The bezel is so easy to rotate. And there's just a perfect amount of grip on the side of the bezel that gives you plenty of grip. Finishing of the watch is lovely. It has some polished elements to it. It also has some brushing. The sides are brushed. The tops are brushed to kind of match the brushing on the bracelet down here. But there are some polished elements as well. If you look, you see that corner there where the side of the case meets the top. There's a little bit of polished there. Obviously there's polishing on the bracelet, and it's just a lovely watch. So the finishing is nice. I like a nice brushed watch, and as you can see, it's polished up here as well. So the crown, as you can see, it has the B logo for Breitling. It is quite nice. So the movement in it, I believe I'm pretty sure it's an ETA based movement. It is not like an in-house movement, but it is a customized to Breitling off-the-shelf ETA. The bracelet has this sort of diagonal, which I think is a little different. It does kind of have that oyster-like, look to it, but at the same time, it's doing its own thing, and I think Breitling has been doing this for a couple of decades now, having this kind of style of bracelet. Obviously, you have a mil deployant and a really good, push button system for on-the-fly adjustment with a lot. I think you have at least almost, I'm going to say 2 centimeters of adjustment there, pretty much. And the way I size the watch is that I pretty much size it so it fits well at the lowest setting. So that giving me a lot of adjustment, if I need to loosen it up if I'm active, or if it's a hot day or the summertime or something. Obviously the clasp has taken a beating, and given that it is polished, but it comes with the territory, and it's something that you kind of have to live with. Any watch with a polished, where the clasp is polished, and it's going to take a beating, and there's really not much you can do about it other than polishing it, taking a tap, having it polished, and maybe getting out some of the swirls and scratches. Let me talk about some of the negatives of this watch before. Overall, everything that I said here is overall positive. I really like this watch. I think it's a great watch for the money. Fantastic. I think I just saw one of these for, brand new on eBay for like 3,600 bucks. It's not this particular variant. This does not have the slow motion look of the earlier 1960s watches, you know, that have sort of like this extra area, contrasting color here in the rehaut area. But I think I chose this watch because I like the fact that it's sort of just a very nice bright white dial, and I didn't have anything that looked like this, so I just wanted to kind of mix it up. So as far as the negatives, my one negative is the crown is a bit rough. The crown is pretty rough. It does have function to it because it is very easy to grip on, given that it has very high ridges, if you can see that there. But at the same time, it is, you know, you do feel it when you kind of like bend your wrist a little bit. You do feel it kind of bite into your skin a little bit, but it's not too bad. So the crown is probably one of my more negative aspects of the watch. And so my other negative, which is sort of like a personal thing, I wish the seconds had a little bit of a counterweight to it. As you can see, it's sort of just, you know, has no counterweight to the seconds hand. But I absolutely do love the tip of it, how it's sort of like a kind of like a bronzy color matching the font of the Superocean on the dial, which I think is really tasteful, a really nice touch. But I wish it did have a little bit of a counterweight. That I think would have been nice. But honestly, that's it. The crown and the little bit of a counterweight on the second hand. And other than that, I think this watch is almost perfect. I wanted to break out a couple notable divers from my collection to kind of compare and contrast it with the Breitling there. And I kind of have them order from kind of like most expensive as far as, you know, the retail price to least expensive, given with the Oris down there to the right. The Omega, if I had to choose a winner out of all these, I would have to put the Omega at my favorite. It has the best finishing. Probably the one knock of it would be the bracelet, but the bracelet kind of is part of the Omega Seamaster's identity at this point. So it's just, you either like it or you don't, but the watch itself is the best, I would say. It would be hard for me to choose between a favorite between the Tudor and the Breitling. You know, the micro adjustability of the Breitling might give it the edge, but I really do like the Tudor. However, the Breitling is so much thinner and easier to wear. The Tudor is a bit chunkier, but at the same time, I do like that because it sort of gives me that masculine, you know, feel on my wrist, and it feels substantial. The Oris is just by far the value winner. I think this watch retails for about 2,600 bucks. I don't remember, I think the Tudor is over 5 by now, and this is I think 59 right now. So these are very comparable as far as price, and trade at a similar, actually I think you can probably get the Breitling for less, but on the secondary market, but similar price range. Even on the secondary market, these GMTs go for about 3,600 bucks now. I think you can probably get one of these for maybe 3,200. 33-ish. I just saw one of the Omega Seamasters for 4,800 on eBay. And I paid retail for this watch. So but overall, I mean, these are just great watches. You can't go wrong with any of these four, as you can see. But I think these are some of the best dive watches that you can buy. The money can buy. Obviously, I'm not counting the Submariner. I don't own one, and also it's just it's in a completely different league as far as price. Even though the Seamaster's gone up, I think it's like 6,800 now, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong. I'll put the price on the screen. But you really can't go wrong with any of these. But I think the Breitling has really great history, and as I mentioned earlier in this video, and history that rivals these other guys as well. Maybe not the Oris. I haven't done kind of like a deep dive on the Oris. Obviously the Aquis is a new line. I know Oris has been around a long time, but as far as these three guys here are concerned, I think their pedigree is comparable. Let me slap this guy on the wrist. I almost ended the video without putting it on my wrist, so I can show you what it looks like. I have about a 7-inch wrist, and I don't even think I mentioned this is a 42mm version of the Breitling Superocean. As you can see, fits quite nice. I honestly, even if you have a bigger wrist than mine, I think the 42 is really all anybody really needs. But I think they make up to a 46mm. I would personally, I would stick with a 42. I think it's more than enough. Maybe go up to the 44, but that's if you have an enormous wrist. But the 46 is just crazy. You'd have to be like a football player or something. But yeah, that's it. So I've been thinking about it a while, and I've never attempted to name a watch, but I think after looking at it and kind of looking at the picture that I took of this watch in the snow, I'm gonna dub this watch the Breitling Night King. I think it just looks like it looks like a White Walker on my wrist, sorta. As far as this watch is concerned, I think you really can't go wrong. The value that you get for this watch, especially in the secondary market, but even if you want to buy a brand new watch, it's not, theoretically, you could even go gray market or on eBay and buy one new with tags for, like I said, I saw one for $3,600 with box and papers and everything. So you really can't go wrong with the Breitling. If you want, this seriously can hang with the big boys out there. And it, personally, I think it is one of the big boys as far as like modern divers are concerned. So this is a watch you can absolutely be proud of, and I can absolutely recommend it. And I really, given its history and its current, its value, it's just got a lot going for this watch, and I absolutely love it. And it's definitely a keeper in my collection for the long term. I think I pretty much covered everything with this video, but if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. And again, it really helps a lot if you can like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.